Well, good evening or afternoon. Sun's still out. It's sunshiny. So welcome to the March 19th board meeting for the Humboldt County Association of Governments. We'll call this meeting to order, and can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Johnson.
Here.
Supervisor Madrone. Mayor Sawatsky.
Here.
Mayor Burgell.
Here.
Mayor White.
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kenny.
Present.
Councilmember Orr.
Here.
PAC Member Arroyo.
Here.
PAC Member Allstrand.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And we're a little different today. Our first item of business is a regional housing needs allocation public hearing. We get a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. So I will be having Amy launch a brief PowerPoint for us to kind of lead the discussion here. Excellent. Okay. So the purpose, as was noted, for the item here tonight is the next chapter in the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or the RHNA process. And specifically, this is the public hearing on the final draft allocation methodology that was adopted by the board in December, and specifically an appeal to that methodology as submitted by the city of Eureka. So the purpose of this item, just to lead off and to be clear, this is not an action item. This is a public hearing to receive the repeal from the city of Eureka and to consider it, to review any local agency or HCD comments on the appeal, because there is a period of time for which they are entitled to provide written appeal or written comment on the appeal. I will note now and also later that we have not received any other written comments from other local agencies. Of course, to open and conduct a public hearing per Government Code 6558405D and receive public comment on the appeal by the city of Eureka. And hopefully after all of that business, we can end with a robust board discussion, ending in providing direction to staff on what the board would like to see brought back in April for the written determination to take action on the city of Eureka's appeal to the RHNA process. So just a quick refresher to get us from where we started in July to where we are today. Of course, in July, we received from the Department of Housing and Community Development the final Regional Housing Needs Allocation Determination, and that assigned approximately 6,000 units of housing to the Humboldt region, about 48% of which was moderate and above moderate income housing units, and about 52% of which was for below moderate income housing units. Staff worked and brought a draft allocation methodology to the board, which was identified in September. There is a typo here on the slide. It's the total RHNA assigned to each agency was selected as using a methodology that was 50% based on jobs and 50% based on population. Subsequently, units were assigned in each income category to each agency using an adjustment from the regional average on those income categories for each agency. This item came back in November to the board. That was the public hearing on the draft methodology. So similar to this evening, pursuant to Government Code, there needed to be a public hearing on the draft methodology being considered. That is also the meeting in which staff presented to the board HCD comments, where they had brought forward some comments on concerns on HCOG's methodology not measuring or objectively addressing RHNA Objective 5, which is a new RHNA objective for HCOG in Cycle 7, and that is the affirmatively furthering fair housing. And then, of course, the board received a number of comments from members of the public and other agencies commenting on the allocation methodology proposed. In December, staff brought back some updated or revised allocation methodologies at the direction of the board from the November meeting. This included 3 different alternatives that would incorporate opportunity score, VMT, and or income parity. The board, after discussion, ultimately elected what was called Alternative 2 of the updated methodologies. That would assign a total RHNA to each agency, 50% on jobs, 50% on population. So that remained the same. And then in the subsequent step, the below moderate RENA was assigned to each agency 30% based on the agency's opportunity score, which is the measurement of providing housing opportunity consistent with RENA Objective 5, and 70% based on work-based VMT. Lastly, as it leads up to this evening, I will note that HCOG did receive a transmittal from HCD staff. I believe it was February 12th. After the adoption of the RENA methodology in December by the board, staff submitted that to HCD for review. They have 60 days in which to review it. They did finalize that review and submit written notification to HCOG that, in their terms, approve HCOG's methodology, and that they found that the methodology proposed furthered the objectives of the 5 RENA statutory objectives. So after adoption, and again after receiving transmittal from HCD, HCOG opened 2 appeal periods, the first of 30 days, the second of 10 days. And the city of Eureka did file an appeal on January 15th during the first appeal period for the methodology that was adopted at the December meeting, the December 2025 meeting. Staff will note that no additional appeals were received from any other member agencies. And as noted in the staff report, after the appeals are received, HCOG is required to circulate those to member agencies and allow for a comment period for member agencies to comment on appeals received. That timeline closed on March 16th. In HCOG staff, we did not receive any written comments on the appeal received from the city of Eureka. We have also not received, or at least our staff has not received, any written public comments prior or after publishing the board packet and prior to the meeting. So the next few items will just kind of help paint the picture for the process and the decision points as we move through the appeals process. First of all, I want to highlight what I will call the paraphrased approved grounds for an appeal to the RENA process. So this is straight from government code, that an appeal made by any of the member agencies governed under HCOG shall be consistent with and not to the detriment of the development pattern in an applicable SES. In that case, for us, that's the Regional Transportation Plan. And the RENA appeal must address one of the following criteria, and that is that 1, the COG failed to consider information providing during the local agency survey that was provided to all agencies in July. I will note Eureka did not provide a response on that survey, so it's not their appeal is not subject to item 1. That 2, the COG failed to further the intent of the 5 RENA statutory objectives in their methodology. We'll get into that in a moment, but that is the claim as part of the City of Eureka's appeal is tied to criteria 2 there. And the 3rd being a significant and unforeseen change in circumstance that has occurred since the time of the initial allocation that merits revision. That again is not being cited. So fast forward to Eureka's appeal. I will summarize it here, and I know we have staff with the City of Eureka who will be speaking to this after my brief presentation here. So I will be brief and provide an overview, although of course it was addressed more in the staff report provided in concurrence with this appeal. That City of Eureka's appeal generally cites criteria 2 as it pertains to the previous slide, so that the methodology does not further the intent of the 5 RENA statutory objectives. Specifically, that the weighting assigned to work-based VMT for the City of Eureka substantially outweighs the opportunity score adjustment, which ties specifically to AFFH and RENA Objective 5. And also that the methodology raises concern that the adjustment step as applied does not meaningfully differentiate allocations based on access to opportunity and does not promote a balanced income mix consistent with government code. So that ties into RENA Objectives 4 and 5. The appeal does not request a specific reduction in low-income RENA. It does not, and clearly states they are not seeking a reduction in their overall allocation, but rather a kind of an unassigned rebalancing between the below moderate income and the moderate and above moderate income categories. Can you click back on the screen? Oh, there we go. Flying all over the place. Okay. So appeal adjustment options. So there are 2 major options that the board can consider for any appeal, or that any COG could consider for any appeal to the RENA process. So per government code, the methodology, once adopted and reviewed by HCD, cannot be revised. So how appeals are handled through the RENA process is by performing unit adjustments after a determination is made by a governing body. Adjusting the units, if you could imagine, would be taking units from the appellant agency and distributing it to other agencies. And there's two ways you can do it. If the proposed adjustment is less than 7% of the total RENA, which in our case, the total RENA is 6,000 units. So 7% is approximately 417 units. So any adjustment below that, the units would be removed from the appealing agency and proportionally redistributed to all remaining agencies. And I will note that the code specifically cites all remaining agencies as part of that. So you can't, as part of this process, pull units from one agency and selectively redistribute them. They have to go proportionally to all remaining agencies. The second is if a proposed adjustment is 7% or greater, which I don't think in any way, shape, or form meets the intent of Eureka's appeal, the COG would be required to develop a methodology to redistribute those units, which of course would take time and more contact in order to be able to do that. Lastly, I will note that the COG board must approve a written determination that either approves or denies or modifies any appeal received. So in the subsequent action item in April, it will be the requirement that this board certify a written determination that takes action on the appeal submitted by the City of Eureka. Which leads us into our next steps. As I noted previously, we do have staff with City of Eureka here. So in addition to the staff report and the appeal that was provided therein, and the brief introduction here, it's also to receive the appeal from the City of Eureka. After that, we'll need to open a public hearing and receive public comment on the appeal to satisfy government code and, of course, just regular practice at a public meeting. And last, we'll be seeking, of course, discussion on this item by the board. I do have the supplemental material, some graphs and things that were included in the staff report. I'm going to hold back on that until after further discussion so we can look at that if the board should so choose to during discussion. But we are looking for a direction from the board to take back as staff on what to bring back as the written determination action item in April. At the April board meeting, in addition to needing to take action on the appeal itself, we'll also be looking that the board direct staff to again finalize the regional housing needs plan with the methodology as adopted and whatever determination is made on the appeal. So with that, I will take a pause really quick and hand it over to staff with the City of Eureka.
Thank you.
I should know how to use this. It's a little low.
It's right there. Isn't that it right there? Up?
It must not be on.
Oh, that's okay.
'Cause I tried to raise it.
I've been told I speak too close to this anyway. Good evening. Kristen Kenyon, Director of Development Services for the City of Eureka. I wrote down my talking points, so I'm just going to read the script because I'm a bit nervous. This is interesting to be on this side of a hearing. It's humbling. Eureka is actively advancing a significant amount of deed-restricted affordable housing and will continue to do so. Our concern is not the obligation to accommodate lower-income housing, but how it is distributed across jurisdictions. Eureka's appeal focused on one issue. The distribution of units by income category assigned to Eureka does not affirmatively further fair housing. We're really just looking at Eureka here. Under the adopted methodology, Eureka, with one of the lowest opportunity scores, receives roughly the same percentage of below moderate income units as jurisdictions with nearly double our opportunity score. Also, we're about at the regional average right now of 52% for lower income housing. And the regional needs determination was 52% lower income, and we're being given 56% low income. So with our distribution of 1,740 units, 965 are lower income. Adjusting that number, I just did the calculation. I think it's 59 units would put us at 52%. So it's a really small amount, but we just felt like it was important to have this discussion because we wanted to make some points about the methodology. So we think the outcome does not meaningfully differentiate based on opportunity, and therefore it does not affirmatively further fair housing. So there are two distinct steps in the RENA methodology. Step 1 allocates total units across jurisdictions, while Step 2 distributes those units by income category. Eureka supports directing overall growth towards infill areas. This is why we supported Step 1, allocating 50% of overall units based on jobs. If there is a desire to further emphasize infill and distance to jobs, that policy discussion belongs in Step 1. Step 2 of the methodology serves a different purpose. It should ensure that every jurisdiction accommodates housing across all income levels. This is what the original methodology was focused on. When VMT, vehicle miles traveled, dominates the income distribution step, as we see in the case of Eureka, it can result in a redistribution of lower income households into already lower opportunity areas, reinforcing existing patterns of income concentration rather than addressing them. Car dependence and the distance between housing and jobs is a major issue in California and the United States. In many regions, households are moving further from job centers to find housing they can afford. Driving to qualify is what they call it. At the same time, income segregation is also a major issue in California and the United States. Many communities are highly homogeneous by income level, with concentrations of poverty in some areas and wealth in others, limiting access to opportunity and social mobility. These are both real problems, but they are not the same problem. While it would be nice if the solution to the problems of social segregation and distance to jobs were perfectly aligned, they are not, and they can sometimes point in different directions. For example, I worked in a high poverty neighborhood in the Bronx with excellent transit access but low high school graduation rates, and in a high income Bay Area suburb with limited transit but significantly greater opportunity, including access to a high performing school that would be transformative for any student. In practice, higher opportunity areas resist affordable housing by pointing to constraints like limited transit access. If those same factors are then used to justify reducing the wealthier community's obligation to plan for affordable housing, the result is a feedback loop that reinforces exclusion. We should be cautious about any framework that results in a jurisdiction having a higher or lower percentage of lower income housing than the regional share, because similar arguments have been used historically and continue to be used to exclude affordable housing from higher income communities. Earlier versions of Step 2 of the methodology included a stronger income parity approach. That approach better aligned with AFFH by moving jurisdictions towards the regional income distribution rather than away from it. We understand that the methodology is now fixed for this cycle, and we don't think redistributing equally to all the other jurisdictions would be fair. So what we want to do is urge HCOG in the next cycle to clearly separate these objectives. Use Step 1 to direct overall housing growth towards infill and job-rich areas, and then in Step 2, assign each jurisdiction the same regional percentage of units by income category, with adjustments only to advance income parity and integration. Without that distinction, the methodology risks undermining one of RENA's core statutory purposes. Thanks.
Thank you. And that was a very concise and I just want to make sure I heard you right. You're not saying to distribute housing to the other jurisdictions?
It's frustrating that, it was just the methodology is decided and now we can't change the chosen methodology. We would have to adjust outside of that. And particularly because we would have to adjust by even giving Rio Del, who has a lower opportunity score than Eureka, we would have to take some of their above moderate and give them below moderate. That seems unfair. So I don't think there's a fair solution at this point to our appeal.
I think we see the same thing on the Rio Del matter, so just a moment. So I will open the hearing in just a minute. So thank you for that, and I will ask if there are any questions at this time.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood. Did you say, what was it, 52 units would have to be adjusted under,
I think it's around 50 to 60 units. That would move us to the regional percentage, which was 52%.
right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we will continue the public hearing if there's anybody else that would like to speak on this matter. And we have a few. Supervisor Madrone, I think, is one of them there.
Yeah, can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I've been here just 2 minutes late. I'm calling in remote for cause, and I do not have anybody under 18 in the room, and I'll keep my camera on.
All right, well, thank you. And Colin Fisk with CRTP.
Good afternoon. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP. I want to first say that we recognize and deeply appreciate all the work that the City of Eureka has done in recent years to encourage the building of new homes, including deed-restricted affordable homes. And we agree with the sentiment expressed in the city's appeal in that we believe all communities should have a mix of housing types, including affordable housing. And, every community, even very small communities, have at least some jobs with relatively low wages, and therefore people who would benefit from affordable homes near where they work. And of course, as you heard, amenities like schools and green spaces and so on are important to access for everybody, and having a mix of incomes benefits the whole community. That said, we respectfully disagree with the idea that VMT should not factor into the allocation of housing responsibility by income level. While VMT does not capture everything about the economic opportunity to be found in a given community, it does tell you a lot about access to jobs, schools, and services, as well as transit and bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And of course, these access considerations are particularly important for specific development projects. And we would not deny, of course, that all communities have a responsibility to improve their non-car transportation options. But VMT by jurisdiction, we still think contains important information. We do agree with what you just heard from Director Kenyon that even more important than considering VMT when allocating housing by income level is considering it when allocating housing overall. Regardless of the type or income level of housing, we need to be putting most of it in areas that are or have significant potential to be walkable, bikeable, and transit friendly. This is important, of course, not only for economic and quality of life reasons, but also for climate reasons. And I would just remind everybody that the Regional Climate Action Plan that was recently adopted contains a number of measures aimed at reducing VMT, and all the credible models show that we have to do that in order to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And that is why CRTP and others in the environmental community advocated so urgently earlier in the process for HCOG to weight VMT more heavily when allocating housing at all income levels. We recognize, of course, that that is not the subject of today's appeal, but I do think that that's the most important point to make today. So I just want to emphasize that in the RENA process and all of its other work, HCOG must ensure that the vast majority of new homes are built in areas that are or reasonably can be non-car dependent. And just as a reminder, you've just reaffirmed your policy that at least 80% of new homes should meet that standard, and we think you must now follow through on that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have someone who's looks like their phone number ends in 7718.
Hello, I'll make this much briefer than the prior speaker. I recommend that you deny the appeal. I'm a resident of Humboldt County. As stated by the appellant, there is no way to fix this. This time, your process is far enough along where you have the powers that be have accepted your process. And if the City of Eureka wishes to change or have input for the next cycle, I can understand starting to lobby for that. City of Eureka has major benefits, and it does have a very large tax base from all the people from Humboldt County who come there and shop. And together with that, I think they have equally responsibility to provide the housing. And we have determined through your methodology. So I therefore will sum up by saying I recommend that you reject this appeal. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
And thank you. And Julie.
Good evening, HCOG board. I'm really happy to see this as a topic of discussion. I do get the sentiments from Eureka with their response that they are bringing this forward, but not really going to pursue it. I want to also thank their staff at Eureka because over the years, keeping in touch with all the cities and their allocations, Eureka was actually the first one that brought me onto what is actually the procedure that the state decides what counties moderate and low income brackets are, and it's astounding what they consider low income to be, up to 79,000 for a family of four, and moderate income is extended up to over 100 grand. It's really a fallacy within that. Eureka's pointed that out in the past, so thank you for doing that. I've also made that knowledge up in Delmort. Actually, a lot of the public up there wasn't aware what the actual numbers were that qualify. I think the whole situation, if it did go forward with reallocating, would just be more appeals. We, like I've mentioned in the past with this discussion, like we really need to do our own homework at home and get all our cities in a better conversation about their infrastructure, about their availability of lands and their availability of transport, because we're kind of shooting into the dark every year, and that is not practical planning. There's been a big lack of communication between all the cities. I think that would help us in the future make wiser decisions when it comes to these allocations. I don't think that we have had a great process of educating a lot of the council in our area and public on what really is our housing element, about what really HCD is requesting. Another point that Eureka put out years back was that once we have a developer and a permit is issued, units are counted. So the fallacies are beyond fallacies. I really don't see how this program is going to sustain itself into the future. But in the meantime, we really do just need to work with each other and communicate with each other, because everybody is strained for the infrastructure mainly. That's a huge, huge burden that I don't see with the economy and all the funding drying up, that we're going to be able to get ahead enough to be in compliance. So we need to think ahead, because we're going to run out of resources before they start, threatening anything against us for not complying. Thank you.
And thank you. And we have Epic.
Good afternoon. This is Matt Simmons, the climate attorney at Epic. We're here commenting on this meeting because of the VMT implications of the RENA allocation. I want to start out by thanking the City of Eureka for the work that it's done on housing over the years. We really appreciate the efforts to do infill and affordable housing by both the City Council and the City staff. Given that, we're sorry to be in disagreement about this particular issue. We think that the appeal should be denied. I think, in my advocacy, I hear frequently that state metrics are not a good fit for Humboldt County. And it is my belief that the opportunity score map from HCD is not a great fit for Humboldt County and doesn't accurately capture the goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing that HCD is supposed to be promoting. In HCD's own guidance, they say that the map is, a suggestion and guidance and not to be held to. HCD has also already approved the methodology. And so given that, I think that, reducing VMT and ensuring that affordable housing is being built in places where people have access to jobs and walking to, the stores and all that sort of thing. My last point here is that, there's an implication here that building affordable housing concentrates poverty. I I would argue that we should be thinking about this in the reverse, that the poverty is sort of already in our communities, and building deed-restricted affordable housing will help lift people out of that poverty by helping to take away some of the rent burden. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And now Tyler Vaughn Sanchez.
Hello there. I just wanted to just second everything that Colin said. Ask that you deny the appeal and ask that you continue to value the vehicle miles traveled in future allotments of housing. Thank you.
And thank you. So given all that, is there any questions, comments from the PAC?
Yes. I think I heard the answer twice, but I want to check. Can a rebalancing within a jurisdiction income categories occur without other jurisdiction allocations being affected? That come through okay?
Absolutely. And the answer is no. The process is set up to where if an adjustment happens again to an appealing jurisdiction, that it needs to be proportionally redistributed. And in this particular case, if only a certain income category were taken out, that would have to be backfilled also with the above moderate from other jurisdictions. So yes, the process is made in this particular case to where it would impact all jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Kenny.
Yeah. Can this appeal go to a higher level than us? Where does it go next, if it goes anywhere?
This governing body has the authority to take action on the appeal, and in current government code, that appealing ruling is final. There's not currently a higher body for that. I will note that there is some legislation out there, largely out of some of the arena as it is played out in Southern California, that would propose to be able to make this something that could receive judicial review in the future. But that is not currently the state of the appeal process. So this board, through the appeal process within the parameters, identified in government code and explained earlier in the slide, this board has the ability to make decisions under that, consistent with government code.
Okay. When you say that if what the appeal is seeking is sort of a redistribution of, and that has to be done proportionately. Proportionally to what? Population size?
Like a lot of code, the code is sufficiently vague to allow for some interpretation, but I think what would be, in this particular case, if some units were taken out, proportional redistribution would probably be based on agency size, which is already a metric that's included in the distribution. So it wouldn't be equal numbering of that. It'd be probably proportional based on agency size.
That's what I thought. So this is an 8-year cycle, the RENA cycle, correct?
Correct.
And I know Trinidad is way behind on its cycle 6 allocation as far as actually producing units. Is most of the jurisdictions in Humboldt County in the same boat, or are some people pretty close to meeting their RENA number?
Some agencies have had certainly more building permit activity than others, but if I recall, and I'm shooting from the hip here a little bit, around maybe 2,000 housing units have been developed in the last 8 years, which is about a third of the current regional housing needs allocation
from cycle 6.
from cycle 6. Yeah.
Do projects that include more below market units, are those less attractive to developers in general, or does it make any difference at all?
I'm sorry, if you could, Mayor Pro Tem, if you could speak further into the microphone and repeat the question, please.
Sure, sorry. If a project includes more below market units, does that make it easier or harder to attract a developer to build a project like that?
That's maybe speaking a little bit outside of the intent of the process. What I can say in my own professional experience is, sometimes market rate housing is difficult to develop in Humboldt County, given that it's a struggling economic area overall. So the market rate housing tends to not develop as readily sometimes, or certainly in a lot of jurisdictions. The funding sources and the tax credits, when they are available for government subsidized housing, usually can be great, because that's stepping in and really filling the gap for a builder to come in and do a project. But those, of course, are based on the availability of funding and tax credits, which are actually, unfortunately, at this point in the budget, phasing out some in the state budget.
Right. I imagine those ebb and flow over time.
Is there?
Well, just one more. So essentially, the appeal is seeking to trade with all the other jurisdictions less low-income units for more higher-income units.
Yeah, and what I would say is, I think it is a correct statement to say the appeal is seeking a rebalancing when they're looking at their one agency. It's the circumstance of government code, of course, that ties in the need to do it to all other agencies as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there any public comment while we have a moment here regarding this? Okay, nothing there. Yes, Mayor Burgell.
I just have a few questions. So the question that I heard from Mayor Pro Tem Kenny was, are there any jurisdictions that are close to their cycle 6? Are there?
I'm not prepared to speak directly to that. I have not reviewed other jurisdictions' RENA numbers. I know that the city of Arcata, in a number of their income categories, has done very well.
Yeah, we have exceeded our low income and extremely low income. We are not great on our numbers for moderate and above moderate, but we're working on those. So we're really proud of what we've done so far in cycle 6.
Thank you. And I would say that the city of Eureka is well on their way as well. And then another thing I'm curious about is, so with this process, we are trying to move jurisdictions to the regional average. Is that right? I mean, that's the goal.
That is a portion of one of the 5 RENA statutory objectives.
So currently, the way that we have things listed now, it seems that this is actually, in a small amount, moving the city of Eureka towards, actually away from the regional averages. So I certainly would like this to be considered in the next cycle. I think that that's really important. And at looking at what we have now, it seems that unfortunately there really is no fair way to address this item. There just isn't a fair way. But I would like to see us in the next cycle consider things like income segregation and exclusion, because that is very real. That was a lot of the topic of conversation at our council meeting, to have that more of a balanced approach. So I would like to see those things addressed clearly during the next cycle.
Okay, any other board questions? And I think in light of what Eureka has stated from staff and from council, that the goal of the appeal now is to memorialize a way to look at these income categories and distributions in the next cycle. So we could, for all intents and purposes, say that the appeal is denied, it's moot at this point, and we are memorializing a way to methodize those income categories and distributions in the next cycle. So I think we have direction, if that's what I hear from everybody else. So do you want to put that in a motion, or it's not a
None.
business?
Well,
It's
yeah.
not business. I know that.
Yeah.
But it's not an action. So yeah.
Yeah, none needed. I will say the written statements, the written determinations are somewhat storytelling in nature from the examples that I've seen looking at some other ones. So I think memorializing the intent of what would be RENA Cycle 8 is appropriate as part of bringing back what I'm hearing is a written determination to deny the appeal.
All right. Thank you. And thank you all for comments, and thank you, City of Eureka, and thank you, Mayor Burdell.
We
Got one more on there?
well, I mean, we need to take some formal action, don't we?
No, it's not an action item.
Direction.
I just want to make sure it's memorialized.
Well, I guess I would throw in possibly for the benefit of staff that, well, the observation that of the 5 factors that we have to consider, several of which have multiple elements to them, it's not really possible to promote them all without injuring other factors that are present there. So of all the things that we've worked on here at HCOG, for me, this has been the toughest sledding, even though this is like at least the 3rd time we've looked at it in great detail. It's just, yeah, so many moving parts. But I think the letter we got from HCD affirming our methodology, that it does indeed meet all the criteria, sort of prevents us from granting the appeal at this point, because they are an authoritative group, and yeah, it just seems like we did the best we could. We had concern. I actually voted against the alternative 2, partly on the fears that it might cause HCD to not approve us, but they approved us just the same. So I think we'll try to use Cycle 8 maybe to address more of the concerns that Eureka raises. And so I concur that we should recommend denial of the appeal.
That's where we're going, and where we're going next is to adjourn as the HCOG board. Another one?
Apologies, sir. One quick question. I just want to ask, are we modifying it for sure next time, or are we just going to reassess?
Modify.
Okay. We will modify, or we will assess the modification?
Well, it'll be, that was the recommendation, and they're going to bring something back to look at. So.
Yeah, and again, we'll bring back a draft and something that can be looked at and refined. Should board members upon review have thoughts there. We'll want to remain sufficiently open-ended, just knowing that's 8 years from now, and at the pace of this legislature, who knows what RENA could look like at that time. But I think we certainly have the direction here to move forward with that. So,
thank you very much.
Okay. So at this time, we will adjourn as the HCOG board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And our first item now is public comment on non-agenda items. If anybody has anything to comment on that is not on today's agenda, this is the time to do it. And I don't see any online and don't see anyone here in the audience. Oh, all you gotta do is turn your head for 1 second and there they are. All right, this is public comment on non-agenda items, and Julie.
I'm sorry about that. I have limited service in certain areas. I had to run back over to my phone. I just want to go back to my comments in the past about looking into our diesel hybrid buses. I think we are kind of cutting ourselves short in our rural area, not looking at other alternatives. I mean, there's a lot of theories and speculation on even the climate action stuff. I think having better dialogue as a board about our climate and our individual climate here, and bringing in more conversation about that instead of just being told that we're in a crisis and having to just bend over and accept that, because I think there is lots of valid research out there, lots of everything and supporting evidence that it makes me kind of weary when we are putting all our ducks and eggs in like one direction, not even looking at other factual and creditable situations that we could be facing, and we're ignoring them instead. So I don't really know how to organize that, except like maybe your staff or something can generalize maybe a conversation, something relating back to HUD, and just having a way for all these communities with our resources and lack thereof to have better communication with each other and better planning strategies, I think. And however we can just keep working on that together, every day, every minute is going to really be beneficial for us now and everybody to come into the future. Thank you.
And thank you. Any other? Okay, we will close public comment and move to our consent calendar with 2 items: approval of the meeting record from February 19th and consultant selection for Lolita Safe Routes to School and Connectivity to Tribal Lands project. Does anybody wish to pull anything or comment on anything? Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? We will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we need a roll call with Supervisor Madrone on?
Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Sawatsky,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kenny,
Yes.
Councilmember Orr,
Yes.
Pack Member Arroyo,
Yes.
Pack Member Allstrand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We had no items removed from the consent calendar. That brings us to action items. First being McKinleyville Community Services District request for membership on the Technical Advisory Committee. Staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. So Pat Kaspari, the general manager with the McKinleyville Community Services District, issued a letter to HCOG on February 3rd requesting that the district be granted a seat on HCOG's Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC. For those unfamiliar, the TAC is the staff-level technical advisory body, largely made up of HCOG member agency representatives, in addition to some tribal representatives, Caltrans, Highway Patrol, and a few others. So MCSD is requesting a membership seat on the TAC, largely because of the circumstance that in McKinleyville, the CSD, in their words, largely acts as kind of the de facto government, given that it is a very large or community within the county, which of course is unincorporated. The community is also experiencing rapid growth and demand on their transportation system in addition to their utility systems. And ultimately, they call out the circumstance that the community's transportation network significantly impacts the operations of the CSD itself. So in addition to the letter received by Mr. Kaspari, HCOG also received a number of letters of support and other correspondences in support of their request to have a TAC membership seat. Those were included in the staff report as well. I won't go through each one of those line by line. So this is not the first time that MCSD has made a request to the TAC and to the HCOG board to be considered for membership on the TAC itself. The last time this came around was in 2013. A similar request was made. That was brought before the TAC for consideration. At that time, the TAC, after review, passed forward a recommendation that the HCOG board deny the request for MCSD's seat on the TAC. The main items cited at that time were that HCOG, of course, is a transportation planning agency, and MCSD does not have public road maintenance responsibilities. As a CSD, they wouldn't be receiving any funds that are allocated by HCOG, which is a large portion of HCOG's business, to distribute funds for road maintenance and for transit activity. And lastly, and this at that time was that if MCSD was made a voting member, the addition of MCSD could skew the vote on where resources go, given that MCSD is, tied to a specific area of the county, and the county is currently who operates and maintains the roadway systems in McKinleyville. So that full board staff report and some of that previous correspondence was included in this staff report, just for some background. I will note again, so in 2013, the board decided to deny that request for TAC membership, but they did ask that the CSD staff continue to attend meetings of the TAC and to continue to participate in an effort to ultimately be able to better communicate and better show how membership by MCSD could positively impact the business considered by the TAC. So this came back to the TAC in 2014. At that time, in a tightly split vote, the TAC did pass forward a recommendation to the board that the board consider approving their request for membership on the Technical Advisory Committee. The board considered that also in 2014 and chose to deny the request. So fast forward, again, on February 2nd of this year, we received correspondence from Mr. Kaspari requesting consideration again. We did bring this to our March 5th meeting of the TAC, and it was discussed at length and in a robust fashion. And the motion that came forward from the TAC is presented as one of the possible motions at the front of the staff report, and that's that the TAC made a motion to recommend that the PAC and the HCOG board consider an advisory membership seat for the McKinleyville Community Services District. So to pass forward the sentiment of the board, or of the TAC, the discussion was still calling into question, the need for membership from McKinleyville Community Services District. Certainly the TAC was hesitant in the discussion of a voting membership for any community services district, but specifically in this case, the subject was McKinleyville Community Services District. So after quite a bit of discussion, a motion was made and unanimously passed by the TAC to recommend an advisory membership. So what that would mean is that if approved by the board, the TAC bylaws would have to be updated as per the note in the recommended action in the staff report. And McKinleyville CSD would operate in an advisory capacity, so they could not vote on HCOG business, they could make motions, but they could openly and freely participate in any item agendized on TAC business, as opposed to being limited to public comment. As part of the motion made by the TAC, there was also the sentiment that after a 1-year period of time, it could be reevaluated to determine if a voting membership would be more appropriate for MCSD after an advisory period as part of their recommendation. So with that, what is being asked of the board tonight is to consider the tax recommendation and to consider the request from MCSD and ultimately make a determination either to approve, deny, or modify the membership request on the TAC by McKinleyville Community Services District. I will note we do have General Manager Pat Kaspari here, who I know would like to speak on this item as well. So with that, I will hand it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bird, and thank the PAC for allowing us to speak tonight. So as you all know, McKinleyville is the second or third largest city in Humboldt County, depending on whether Cal Poly is in session or not. We have 17,000 people. It's the fastest growing community in Humboldt with 4.22% increase between 2020 and 2023. At the same time, when the county's overall population decreased by 3% and Eureka's dropped by 1.3%. It's also very interesting that we're here tonight talking while you guys are discussing RENA numbers as well. The county, of course, has not updated their housing element yet. So McKinleyville doesn't know how many of the county housing units we'll get. But I can guess that it is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of what Eureka and Arcata are going to be getting. As Director Bird mentioned, MCSD made the same request in 2013 and 2014. And after the 2014 request, the TAC approved the request and made a similar recommendation to the HCOG board at that time as you have before you today. Unfortunately, the HCOG board did not take staff's recommendation at that time, and here we are again. And McKinleyville continues to grow. So what are the issues that came up in the past? Well, the concern that MCSD's membership would skew the vote. The TAC managed to square that circle by having it as a non-voting position. So that's not an issue at all. The other issue of MCSD doesn't have any roads. It's true we only have a couple miles of roads that we're responsible for. However, excuse me, we also have 12 miles of trails that our Park and Recs department is responsible for. So currently, we don't have access at all to the STIP set aside for trails. And, you know, it's not Director Matson's, there's no reason he should know what trails we're trying to develop at all to be looking out for us while sitting on the TAC. And meanwhile, we don't get access to that funds, and we would love to have access to those funds. And there are, of course, 17,000 people in McKinleyville that utilize Humboldt transportation and roads and can use a voice advocating for them. Then there's the argument that if you let MCSD in, then everyone else is going to want to join. Again, we are the biggest special service district in Humboldt County. We do have Parks and Rec powers. We do have 12 miles of roads. The other biggest special service district in the county is Humboldt Community Services District, and you have a letter in your packet in support of having MCSD on the board, and Humboldt Community Services District mentions in the letter that they're not ready to join the TAC. I also want to make it clear that, you know, if the board or the TAC ever decide, hey, we want to make this a CSD seat as opposed to just MCSD and rotate it among various CSDs, I know MCSD would be amenable to that. So what are the reasons to allow us to have a seat? Well, equity, I think it comes down to equity. I want to assure you all that this is not an attack on the county. I have nothing but respect for Director Matson, and it is an offer to help inform the citizens of McKinleyville on the transportation and HCOG issues that are occurring. There is a letter of support in there from the MCMAC, the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee, and you're probably all aware the MCMAC is the advisory group for the county. So issues that affect McKinleyville, the MCMAC discusses them and presents their recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. There is a letter in there of support from the MCMAC as well for our appointment. I do have a seat on the MCMAC. we had a long discussion at the MICMAC at our last month's MICMAC meeting about this item. And I committed to the MICMAC that we would take advice, recommendations, etc., of what's going on with the TAC as well as HCOG and report it out at the MICMAC meetings. The MICMAC also has a subcommittee, the Committee for Active Transportation, or the CAT, who talks about transportation issues. And so I would get a seat on that subcommittee too and inform them of what's going on with HCOG and the TAC. Same would hold true for any transportation project that affects McKinleyville. It was interesting also to listen to you guys discuss last month the addition of the 2 major transportation hubs in McKinleyville. That I'm sure that there's only a handful of people in McKinleyville who are aware of that item at all. And so things like that, we'd be more than happy to take back and inform the citizens of McKinleyville. I know HCOG staff was also very frustrated when they were talking about the regional transportation plan and set up a public forum in McKinleyville, and nobody showed up for it because the information wasn't out there. So, again, this all comes down to equity. And equity is mentioned 75 times in the latest version of the regional transportation plan. The HCOG website states that HCOG is committed to holding equity and accessibility efforts at the core of our programs and strategies. So all we're looking for is some equity for the people of McKinleyville in regional transportation and housing issues. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to sit down or stand up here and answer questions or just let you guys discuss it.
I've got a couple of questions. Because I've read through the packet, seen the letters, and seen the bylaws for the advisory, technical advisory, the TAC, but I've found nowhere in there where it talks about advisory roles. But what do you see an advisory role as?
I think it's mainly just having the ability to sit at the table while the TAC is discussing issues and being involved in that discussion. And, throwing out our opinion or point of view during the discussion. So I think that would be my advice on, how things are going to impact the people of McKinleyville.
And then one of the things I see potentially is because you would be discussing, advising, advocating for or against something, as well as the county's voting TAC member voting. He would be voting, but also advising, advocating for the same things. So we've got 2 people in the room advocating for the same thing when the funding comes through the same jurisdiction. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. And again, I don't have a vote. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what I'm advocating for. It comes down to what, Director Mattson would vote for. I would turn that around to say, well, I think the voting is already skewed away from the county. The county has 1 vote, and they have a lot more miles of roads than anybody else. So I would argue we'd be helping to bring it back towards the center.
Okay. Is there any other questions for Mr. Kaspari?
Just to clarify, the only reason that the vote would be skewed was because of the mention of the potential to influencing parties being on the same.
I was just bringing it up as advocating for, lobbying, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
But it's gotten a nasty connotation sometimes lately. So.
Thank you.
And Supervisor Madrone.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just checking. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I appreciate the discussion. I did submit a letter of support for the CSD's request for a lot of the reasons that Pat has already explained. It is, for all, sense and purpose, a city, whether it's incorporated or not. And while they don't have direct responsibility for the roads, they do have all their infrastructure primarily in the roads. And as Pat also mentioned, they have responsibility for 12 miles of trail in McKinleyville for maintenance and upkeep of all that, which the COG does have funding for specifically for trails. As was mentioned, the county has, I think it's about 3 times, maybe 4 times the road miles that all of the cities combined have. And they have the lowest pavement condition index of all the road systems in the county. And that's because Tom Mattson, representing the county, plays very nice in the team effort at the TAC. We do not try to throw our weight around and try to gather up all the money, even though we have 3 times the amount of roads, 4 times the amount of roads. What we do is we work very fairly with the cities and the tribes, and there are 6 tribes on the TAC. The whole idea of skewing is kind of interesting because actually most of the COGs around the state are primarily made up of county representation. Humboldt's a unique one in that we have so many, we have all the cities at the table and most of the tribes. So, I don't think anything will change by bringing the CSD to the table, even as a voting member. I think it's really only fair and from an equity perspective and otherwise. But, the COG has to ultimately make the decision. I think at the very least, you ought to support the tax recommendation. But I frankly support the CSD being a voting member. And if you're uncomfortable with that, well, at least make a CSD slot on the TAC. I recognize that requires changing the bylaws and things like that. And you could say that only CSDs that have responsibilities for roads and or trails or things that the HCOG actually funds and actually would have to have those powers and authorities, which would basically reduce yourself down to probably only 1 or 2 CSDs in the whole county. So you're not going to see a rush of all these other small CSDs suddenly wanting to also have voting rights on the TAC. So as I said, I support their request to be a full voting member. But if you don't want to go there, how about at least creating a CSD, a qualified CSD position on the TAC? Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the COG. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you. I am a little bit curious about. I'm not necessarily trying to identify a loophole per se here or anything like that, but I am curious about the nexus between. So I know that the McKinleyville CSD is also a lighting district, and then transportation planning agencies do sometimes fund lighting related projects that pertain to transportation corridors. So I'm curious if there's if that entered into the conversation at all, or how that might have factored in this discussion in the past.
It didn't come up at the TAC at all, but it is just another one of the reasons that plays into the why we should be at the table.
Great. I was just wondering if that was part of the conversation. Thank you.
I didn't even know that MCSD was a lighting district. Is that in the residential portion, or is that part of the Central Avenue Sutter corridors, or
both? Yeah. So yep, we do street lighting as well.
Okay. Any other comment on this from anyone?
Yeah, Mike. I don't have a concern about an advisory seat. I don't know that I would ever, and I wouldn't be here, approve of that seat being having a vote. But advisory is good for me.
Okay, any?
Are we on questions or comments?
Either one.
Well, we haven't taken public comment.
Not yet, but.
Well, should we save our comments till after public comment?
We could.
I'm just curious, point of order wise, how that works.
Well, I see someone's already ready. Den-
Good afternoon. Nice to see you. Which one? Oh, is it on now? Thank you. I didn't need a glass of water today. I took my inhaler real hot. Dennis Mayo, I'm the board president of MCSD, and maybe this is my 6th time asking for us to join the TAC. And there's a definite trail nexus in your bylaws, just for one thing. But another couple points that I wanted to make is 3 minutes when you can come to the meetings. 3 minutes isn't enough time to delve into the minutia of what road is where and the depth of the substrat, where the water lines are. And our staff, MCSD staff, is so excellent, knows every inch of the town and the water structure and the sewer structure. And we partner with the county, and we have a good relationship with the county. And Tom is a personal friend, Tom Matson, and he does a great job. But he cannot know what our staff knows, okay? I'll give you a couple clear examples. Quite some time ago, School Road had a hump. And we needed to cut that hump down. The county wanted to cut that hump down and make it a better flow down to where they put the roundabout in there at School Road. Well, guess what? When they did that, they uncovered our water and sewer lines. Why didn't they know that? Well, that's because the communication that should have happened at the meetings early didn't happen. Okay, that's not Tom's fault. It's just things that happen. Cost us $175,000 to fix that, and it cost the county money too. Kind of egg in everybody's face. That would not have happened had we actually been at the table to go through the things and discuss them and give better info. Another is Carr Road, which I live on. Been there for 50 years. It's the back entrance into the back of the airport. And as it goes up in loops, we go to the McKinleyville Rodeo Association Arena. Been a private-public partnership with the county for 65 years. Over the summer in our events, we have more than 1,000 horse trailer trips up there and back. It has not been touched the whole time I've lived there. I patch it. I go out and for the grace of God, the 3 contractors that I know, they let me get into their blacktop pile, and I keep that road fixed, right? And as we start looking at projects, it's not unwarranted for us to be able to point out spots in our community that aren't getting the attention, and not because the county doesn't want to. I mean, just what does Supervisor Madrone say? They have 4 times the road miles of everybody combined. So those details really matter and really can help. And I can tell you guys that MCSD on the TAC will be an absolute asset to you. It's not a pushy kind of a deal. It's time. It's time for us to be there. We do the work. We do the diligence. We're good partners. Ask anybody around our community. We are good partners, and we're out for the best situation. And you know, we know at times we don't get what we want. I mean, we all do that. Anyway, I want to thank our general manager. He, with his engineering background, he gives you the specific details. I'm more the emotional part of the deal. And all I can say is it's time, and we would appreciate you letting us have a seat at the table, however you decide. An advisory, we would be incredibly happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment on this item?
Hi, good evening. My name is Greg Pratt. I'm the general manager at Humboldt Transit Authority, and I actually voted in favor of them having a seat on the TAC. I don't feel like with a 15-member TAC that adding the the McMac, I don't feel like adding them is going to skew anything, even voting wise, because I've been on the TAC where I had served for 10 years and there was 2 transit agencies and it never benefited us to have 2 votes. There's too many people. There's too many people that have a voice. And like I said, things have worked out between the TAC members. So I've actually voted in favor of them having a vote. I feel like if they're going to put in the time, that they should have a vote. And I also just wanted to bring up that McKinleyville is growing as far as transit ridership. We're going to be needing to do a lot of work with bus stops, routing. Having a member on the TAC would help us communicate that. And also just having that direct line of communication would help. So thank you.
Thank you. We got a few votes here, a few comments. Mary Burke. Looks like.
Good afternoon, Chair, HCOG TAC, and members of the public. This is Mary Burke. I'm the chair of the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Let's see, I'm here to speak on behalf of, everything that was included in our letter, and also to reiterate some of the things that General Manager Paxpari said, and that is that the MCMAC, as we call it, the Municipal Advisory Committee and MCSD really have developed a great relationship, and having MCSD on the TAC would help bring information in both directions. The MCMAC gets regular attendance, has a very interested following, especially when it comes to safety and access for roads and trails and making our roads work well for businesses. I want to mention that we have 3 major projects being planned along Central Avenue to help increase, the awareness here. We have Humboldt Commons, which is a retirement community. We have We Are Up going in along Central Avenue, which is a community for developmentally exceptional people. And we have the town center development, where we really do hope to get a major transportation hub, but it's going to attract everyone from children on up the age spectrum. So we really need safe roads that work well for businesses. And I completely agree with Director Mayo that MCSD's depth of knowledge and excellence in their staff would be a great voice at the table. So I want to advocate for a full voting membership for MCSD. And if it's qualified, as advisory at this time, know that we'll be coming back again to ask for that full voting membership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Evan Schwartz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Evan Schwartz, and I just wanted to speak out as a member of the McKinleyville community. I'll keep it short and sweet. I wanted to speak in support of what Mr. Kaspari, Madrone, and Mayo have already stated. And I think that the MCSD having a seat at the table would really help somebody who has a really good idea of the local infrastructure and be able to identify needs and appropriately communicate them to the county to help solve problems together, making efficient use of our collective resources. And then that's my 2 cents. And thank you very much for your time.
And thank you. And again, telephone number ending in 7718.
I guess I'm going to play the devil's advocate on this one. Every other word was equity. I haven't. There's some kind of communication with other community services districts to see if they wanted to have equity and a seat at the table also. I think it would be, in my opinion, inappropriate to move forward with this And they mentioned maybe all the community services district could participate in some kind of a non-voting seat. I could understand that being in everybody's best interest. All of these community services districts have infrastructure underneath county roads. A lot of them do have some form of trails, or they're trying to develop trails. And just because they're smaller, like Willow Creek or Garberville, possibly, I guess, Lolita maybe, some of these smaller areas, I think they should also have representation if you're going to give it to one. The Timmerdale can, and it's been looked into to become a city. At such time, of course, then they have full representation, both on the COG and the FAT. And until such time as they actually do that, you cannot help it if the community services district is not communicating with Madison and they shave a road down, not knowing that there was a hump there for a reason. That's communication with the county. It is the county. I mean, so anyway, I really strongly suggest that you do the same as they did in the prior time and reach out to all of the other community services districts, give them all a chance to lobby for some kind of participation. Otherwise, it's perceived that when it comes down to financial recommendations, McKinleyville will have a larger say, a larger sway in some small little town, and I highly recommend you take that action instead and maybe punt on this one and reach out to the other community services districts, give them an opportunity to speak.
And thank you. And Supervisor Madrone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the rest of the board. I would like to make a motion. It looks like we're done with public comment. I would like to make a motion to support the TAC recommendation to make the McKinleyville CSD an advisory member tonight, and to also direct staff to put together a recommendation for how a CSD representative seat could be created, what you might need to do to amend the bylaws, and bring back that item for this board's full consideration of having one CSD represent all of those CSDs, and it would be a qualified position. So that's the motion. I hope it would be seconded and considered, just to, at the very least, provide for an advisory seat at this time with a follow-up on the details. And I will say that it's not unusual. It's not a precedent. LAFCO has a similar situation where we have a representative city sit on LAFCO, and that's voted on by all the cities. So there's some good precedent out there in other COGs as well as LAFCO on how to do all that. So I hope that the first part of what I mentioned as a motion for two actions, one, to appoint them as an advisory member tonight, and two, to have staff follow up with some details how a CSD representative seat might be developed.
I'll second both. Yes, and I'll second both.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion on this motion?
Yeah, I'm a little, I'm definitely in favor of an advisory seat at this time out of deference to our advisory body. And I think I'm not really worried about a precedent-setting thing where other CSDs would come and demand equal treatment, because really all we're doing is, the precedent we're setting is that if you're a CSD and you want to even an advisory seat on the TAC, you first put in 12 years of coming to meetings. And so I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that are anxious to start that process. So the precedent is not really a thing. And I feel like, a year is going to go by fast. I'm comfortable with seeing how it goes in a year, and then our TAC can advise us again whether they think a full voting seat is the appropriate thing to do, and we would decide it at that time. So.
Mayor Burgell.
Thank you. So I think it's really important that people have the ability to make decisions for their community where they live. And I think that the knowledge that people that live in a region have is very important to making decisions. And so that's why I support this. I am not opposed even to a voting member. I do hear what you're saying, Supervisor Madrone, as we can bring that back maybe, you know, sooner than a year. But certainly, I think it's going to be an important consideration. These folks are already doing the work, and I think that they need a voice at the table. So my vote is yes, just so you know.
And I apologize. I probably should have been listening better, but could you clarify the second part of that motion, please? Or what? Was there a second part? I mean, okay.
Did you capture that, Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Restate
So the second part of the motion?
Yes.
Yeah, so the second part was to direct staff to go back and put together a packet to bring back to this board that would lay out how a CSD representative seat would be created at the TAC, and then how the cities would, or I'm sorry, the CSDs would go about electing one CSD to represent them on the TAC. And even at the TAC, there was a lot of talk, and Tom Mattson spoke to this, that it really would need to be a qualified CSD that has some nexus with trails, for instance, or lighting, or other things that the COG actually does fund and support. So is that clear enough?
Yes, and I did take notes. I just wanted to make sure that I heard everything correctly. So I do appreciate McKinleyville's contributions to regional issues and their importance of their community. And I can support maintaining a fair representation. I do support that structure that reflects the roles of incorporated cities and unincorporated areas. And I do not have an issue with having a seat at the table in an advisory capacity at this time. So, yeah, thank you. That was a lot of words, I know.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Thank you, and I think I'm appreciating where this conversation is going. I concur with the general manager of HTA, Greg Pratt, that it's useful to have McKinleyville more officially represented at the TAC, and I generally like where this is going. But I think, part of this is a recognition that McKinleyville has a unique status as a pretty large population for our community. And as a CSD has not to say any CSDs don't have robust functions, but they have sort of a uniquely large charge. So I while I appreciate the idea of other qualified CSDs being able to participate, I think the purpose here is to really recognize how McKinleyville is unique. And I want to say that the TAC meetings are open to the public, and I have been to many a TAC meeting back in the day, but and really seen how responsive. It's a small group, and you're able to be in that space very responsive to other participating agencies that come to comment or participate. I really do think that it would be a respectful and receptive environment to any CSD or other public agency that wanted to come and weigh in and give input about a specific project or proposal. So I don't think, I guess I would see a lot of value in keeping that as a McKinleyville specific advisory seat as is being proposed here, but not necessarily rotating it. And I don't know, that's not the motion on the floor, but I wonder if the motion maker would be interested in revising it again from a transit perspective. We have a lot of riders in McKinleyville, and having that kind of ongoing advisory seat, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I agree with Supervisor Arroyo on that. I think MCSD needs its own seat, and then potentially bring forward another rotating seat for the other CSDs.
Yeah, one last thought about having a CSD in general seat that would represent all CSDs. I have a little trouble getting my head around how they would resolve potential conflicts of interest that come up with, their particular organization versus other CSDs that might have other interests. that they're expected to stand up and advocate for. So, I think we ought to keep it MCSD, and the precedent is they waited 12 years to get on here. So anybody else that wants to do that can start the process.
I agree with that. If someone wants to participate in this, they too can go through the process. But I currently think that there's plenty of opportunity for other areas to come in and comment in the interim. So I don't think it's a problem.
Well,
Could I ask a question procedurally? In order for that to be moved forward, we would have the motion maker ask if they would be willing to change that motion. How does that work?
yeah, restate it.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say that I would, in light of Supervisor Arroyo, Director Pratt, and I can see that happening, but I'm not sure we need to open it up to all CSDs at this time. I think the term was a qualified CSD, and they could be an information clearinghouse if necessary for that. But in the meantime, they would be able to get there. And so I think that's where we're at. But Supervisor Madrone, about restating your motion.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the discussion, and I have to say that, my preferred motion would be to have the board support the McKinleyville CSD to become a voting member. And just keep it at that. Just keep it simple for all the reasons that have been stated. And I would love to see that be supported. But I'm having a hard time judging where this board is going to land. So, maybe we could go ahead and see if that motion has the support of the board. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then I would probably make a second motion to at least support the tax recommendation for an advisory member. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bold move of withdrawing my motion and entering a new motion to support the McKinleyville CSD to be a voting member of the TAC.
Second.
Yeah, I'm much more comfortable with starting out as an advisory member personally, out of deference to what our TAC is recommending to us. So I don't think I would be able to support the new motion at this time.
Me too.
And I think the recommendation from the TAC was as an advisory, and that's where I would fall also at this time.
And that's the same for me.
I would be interested in hearing about that at a later time. I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but certainly right now I feel like no.
May I also weigh in? I wanted to be clear that I was recommending an amendment to the motion related to it rotating between CSDs, because I think the purpose is to amplify the voice of McKinleyville given the number of residents and the scope of the MCSD's responsibilities. But I was thinking that the leaning was in that advisory direction, but just not like the purpose being to make that a McKinleyville advisory seat specifically. So it seems like that's where the room is perhaps headed. And I know it's really hard to participate when you're not in the room and you're sick, and yet you're trying to lead the way because this is your district. So thank you for all that.
Well, if I might, through the chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I do appreciate the discussion, and these things aren't easy. I guess, I'm trying to come from a place of visioning this increased cooperation, collaboration, and support, instead of a place of fear around skewing results and things like that. Again, you know, the TAC functions incredibly well because every member, and this would be true with the CSD at the table, every voting member plays nice with each other. Just that's the way I would put it. They all work really well together. The county does not elbow its way in to try and take a majority of the money, even though it has a vast majority of the roads and other things. And I really very much appreciate HTA's Greg Pratt for his voice in regards to how transit is developing in McKinleyville over time and all these other things. So it does not sound to me, from what I heard from the majority of the people there on the board, that there is support at this time to vote to have the McKinleyville CSD become a voting member on the TAC. Now, maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I think I heard 5 people pretty much say that they wouldn't support that. So I'm going to once again withdraw my motion and put back in a new motion, my third motion. Sorry for all the back and forth, but put in a motion to support the tax recommendation to have the McKinleyville CSD be a voting member, be an advisory member at this time with a follow-up in a year to see how that's working. And you can consider other actions down the road. But just to keep it simple, support the tax recommendation for McKinleyville CSD to be an advisory member to the TAC.
I'll second that. I think 6 months, but I'll go with a year.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would this be this will be a roll call?
Chair Johnson,
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Sawatsky,
Yes.
Mayor Burgell,
Yes.
Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kenny,
Aye.
Councilmember Orr,
Yes.
PAC Member Arroyo,
Yes.
PAC Member Allstrand.
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You look comfortable.
Chair
Receiving.
Mike,
Yes.
could I ask a question before all they're leaving?
Okay, Pat.
I hope this isn't a can of worms. I'm just interested. The MMAC, as you call it, one of their charges was to, I believe, examine or survey for incorporation. Was that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'll take just a short answer. Do you have a status of where that lies right now?
Sure. Short answer.
And-
So the MCMAC did set up a subcommittee to look at incorporation and not advocate for or against, but just to examine it. And that subcommittee has been meeting. I think we're on our 4th year, and we're getting some traction, pulling together funding to do the initial studies. We're getting traction with Cal Poly, pulling funding information or financial information from the county, and they're pulling that stuff together. So it's moving forward. How many more years it's going to take before we even have that report out, I don't know.
I know it's very difficult, but I lived and worked in McKinleyville 12 years, and just a personal statement. McKinleyville will not get the civic, political, or general acceptance in my observation until they really come to a decision about incorporation. Thank you.
Thank
I
you, and
appreciate
again, thank the PAC very much for the consideration tonight. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Supervisor Madrone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly to respond to Mr. Jorgensen's question. Yes, we did just receive the funding to do the initial feasibility analysis. That will be completed in 1 year or less. If that shows that it is financially feasible, then we will be raising the money, about $150,000, to do what's called the comprehensive feasibility analysis. That would take approximately 1 more year. So that puts us out 2 years. If that comes back to LAFCO with the reality of it looking very feasible and supporting the community, then it ultimately would go to the community for a majority vote of the voters. So all in all, Mr. Jorgensen, it looks like we're looking at 2-3 years or so before that question can be answered. And as Pat said, this subcommittee is not trying to lobby for or against incorporation. We, those that are involved at the McKinneyville Incorporation Exploration Subcommittee, feel strongly that it's high time that we as a community get the data on the financials, revenues, expenses, and really work with the community to look at all the pros and cons and bring this question forward. So I hope that answers your question with some detail. It's definitely picking up momentum as General Manager Kaspari has mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We come to our last, we have 2 discussion items, the first being the dial-a-ride analysis report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Stevie Luther, HCOG Associate Planner, and I'll present this item. This is a discussion about our dial-a-ride, essentially the funding structure. Dial-a-ride is the paratransit service that is required by the ADA around fixed route transit. So the ADA requirement is for dial-a-ride to be around the city of Arcata and the city of Eureka. Since the 1990s, at least, HCOG has partnered with folks to do supplemental dial-a-ride. So we have expanded zones that go south as far as CR and Humboldt Hill and King Salmon, and then also the Bayside area, Samoa area, and McKinleyville area. So we have our required mandated dial-a-ride zones, and then also these supplemental zones. What's bringing this topic up tonight is we're sharing the results from a study that the Western Transportation Institute had done. We've been aware of this inequity in the way that dial-a-ride is funded and the cost share allocations for a while, and we wanted to have them look at that in more detail. So in November 2024, they shared this report, and we're sharing out the results now to bring up this discussion. So essentially, the cost share is split right now between HTA paying Eureka and Arcata's portion, and then the county and HCOG. The study is recommending a cost share allocation that would be based more on hours and mileage. What they found is that 45% of the completed rides within Eureka are only taking up about 15% of the miles. So 80% of the hours and miles that are going towards dial-a-ride between non-mandated zones are taking up, or 80% of the hours and miles, are coming from trips that are going between these non-mandated zones, which is driving much of the cost. So we're looking at a different cost share agreement that can essentially make it more equitable and free up funding. Thanks, Amy. And another issue here at HCOG is that our portion of the funding is coming from our local transportation funds, priority 4 that goes to community transportation services, which is goes towards the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, which is also HTA, and then for our portion of the supplemental dial-a-ride. That amount is capped at less than or equal to 5% of the remaining amount in our LTF fund after funding higher priorities. And right now, according to the latest budget, we're coming up to and even exceeding by a small amount that 5% cap. So essentially the picture is that the rising costs of administering the CTSA and the supplemental dial-a-ride are not keeping up with our existing funding sources. So right now we're, in discussions. We want this to be a collaborative project, but we are running up against not having enough money. We're looking at different solutions that could include capping the trips and how many zones they're going across so that there are less miles being driven. We could also look at changing the fare structure so that we're recouping more of the costs through higher fares. But we do recognize that this is serving a vulnerable population and people do rely on these rides. So we want to come to an equitable solution. Another thing that has been put on the table in discussions is having a third-party consultant go back and look at these, the rides being taken in even more granular detail and come back with a more specific recommendation about how we can adjust our dial-a-ride costs. So with all that being said, it is being brought to the board tonight as to kind of flag the issue, to hear any ideas you might have and direction to staff about how to approach resolving this issue. And we do have some folks in the audience like Greg Pratt that can speak to it more. But I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I was going to say, if you have any for Stevie, but then we'll get Greg up here in a few minutes.
I was just hoping that you could clarify how it's currently funded again. You said it was the county and only Eureka?
Yeah. The specific percentages here. So HTA pays 70%. And that's coming from, well, the actual split is it's 58% Eureka, 10% Arcata, 18% County, and 14% HCOG.
Thank you. I was glad you clarified that because I do remember voting for money to go to HTA because of the joint powers. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Correct.
Out of curiosity, do you have any sense for why so many people are wanting rides out of like the approved areas?
Yeah.
They're not, tracking the purposes of these rides. They are general purpose transit trips. I think the HTA staff that coordinates dial-a-ride probably knows better because there are many repeat daily customers using the service. One is clients for adult day healthcare of Mad River going from Humboldt Hill to Arcata. Is one that has come up several times. And apart from that's one of the issues we need to look into in more detail.
Okay, yeah. I wish I had some good advice for you, but I don't really know much about it, so yeah.
Thanks.
Any other?
Yeah. Can one entity provide DAR service in the county?
Currently, the entity is HTA has taken on the operations of DAR. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm thinking one entity gets the funding and then administers, if that's even possible.
So yes, HTA is administering and operating it. The cost share is the contract that we renew annually to get that funding. But it all does currently come through the HCOG local transportation fund.
Chair Johnson, could I make a suggestion that that we have Greg Pratt come up and just
Getting ready
okay,
to see
okay,
if
thanks.
Stevie was done, I was going to have Greg come up.
I mean, I love hearing from Stevie, but
Director Pratt.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks again for letting me speak. I've been trying to understand Dollaride for years, so I really applaud this body for taking this on because it's not easy. One of the things, I know there's different scenarios and there's all kinds of notes and tables in there, but what this boils down to is transit is funded by miles and hours. Transit reports to the state and FTA miles and hours. So I think just as one step, I would recommend at least looking at a funding that is based on standardized transit using miles and hours for that. Just to try to kind of help this out. The other scenarios, they're not reportable, and it's hard to even get funding when there's no methodology. And so it's really important to us that we have that. One thing I did want to say, there's all kinds of terminology, but the city of Eureka, we're mandated to provide paratransit services. And that's, you look in your packet, I think that's 18% of the overall cost. That's all Eureka should be paying for, in my opinion, is what they're mandated, and that's 18%. When they leave Eureka for various reasons, I don't feel that burden should be on the city of Eureka. And just to answer the question, a lot of the travel back and forth is between Arcade and Eureka is because of healthcare and different providers changing and different doctors moving, and I know that's a majority of the ridership is trying to get to, their doctor that's always changing on them. So I guess if I could just summarize, would be I'd like to see the direction lean towards going by miles and hours and getting a consultant in here to help with the next steps after that.
Any other questions or? Well, I think we'll take it. Oh, we have a public comment there.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So currently, how is it funded if it's not being, or what is the methodology? Is it miles? It's not miles per hour. So that's what you were advocating for.
It's not. When we took over administration in 2017, there was no rhyme or reason how it went. So we just set up, it was going to be 2018, 2019. We set up just go by where people reside, and we did it based off of that. And so that's why you see most people reside in Eureka, and so that's why the higher cost share was there. When we were going to move forward with this study, COVID hit, and Dollaride went, ridership went down to nothing. And so that's why you see this, now we're back in it again. Ridership is coming back up. I believe 2024, the beginning is when they started this study again, because there really needs to be a set methodology for us, not only for reporting, but to receive funding. Because we get funding from all kinds of different sources, funding grants.
Well, I wrote down miles and hours and a methodology.
Hi, my name is April Joyce. I'm with Adult Day Healthcare of Mad River, and I am a user, or our clients are users of Dial-A-Ride, have been for many, many years. We are a medically based day program. All of our participants have disabilities which qualify for this program, and also unequivocally qualify them for Dial-A-Ride. As a small center, have never been able to provide all of the transportation for all of our participants to come in on a daily basis. So we've had various partnerships throughout the years. At one point years ago, we actually contracted with City Ambulance to provide services for us. Then we just went to just regular dial-a-ride services. So we are one of those consumers that are going outside of zones. We've primarily used the service for our folks that live in Eureka and are coming into our program in Arcata. And yes, we have that person that is on Humboldt Hill and is coming to our program. He's been coming 5 days a week for many years now. He could theoretically go to the Eureka Center, but he prefers our center. We are a medically based program, and we are also a social program, but we provide nursing and therapies and social work and just a lot of different services. We also work within the constraints of our licensing, that participants who are transported in shouldn't be on a bus for more than an hour each direction, because they all have medical needs. That's just one of the constraints that we're under. And yes, a ride from Humboldt Hill to our center one way, even if you go direct, is about 45 minutes. So that person generally is on the bus for longer than an hour. That's just kind of the way things work. Dial-a-Ride is a shared ride program. But in reading the analysis and the reports, I think one thing that could really help with funding is if there was greater efficiency in the system. Right now, it is not efficient at all. The new scheduling system that came in about 2024 has actually, I think, added more inefficiency to the system than there has ever been. When that system was first initiated, we had two people living at one board and care center that would come to our center on two different buses, or they would go home on two different buses. There's no reason for that. We had people who would come from Eureka that would have to go to McKinleyville to have somebody dropped off there before they came back to our center. That's not efficient. And those are the kinds of things that have been happening with this new system and anecdotally are still happening. Even after HTA has taken it over and said it would be all better, it's still not better. The dispatchers now, when you call to say, hey, my bus is 30 minutes late, any idea when they're coming? The dispatchers are in Georgia, and they don't know where the bus is. They can't tell you when the bus will come unless you happen to be the next person that's being picked up. So if there's still 3 people ahead of you, they just say, I'm sorry, I know your ride was scheduled between this time, and I think it'll come, but I don't know when. So that's, more frustrating for our folks, especially our folks with disabilities. When it was, 2 people going to the same house, riding on different buses, when one of those people had dementia, that's hard for them to figure out, hey, wait, I live with this guy. How come I'm not on the bus with this guy? So yes, I think there are a lot of improvements that can happen to the system to make it more efficient. I don't know if it's a new dispatching system, but something can happen. I know that we are considered part of the premium services because we are going between zones, and premium services do have a higher cost. The cost within a zone is 1 ticket, which is $3. We're paying 3 tickets because we're in 3 zones: Eureka, the transit corridor, and Arcata. So we're already paying a higher cost for it. I know that transportation is expensive. I have looked at other transportation providers. Most of them do charge by the mile. In the last year or so, there have been a lot of other providers that are now out there. Rogue Valley Medical Transit is one of them. They're actually based out of Medford. So they contract with Partnership to provide transportation, and they charge by the mile from Medford. So their Partnership is paying them $600 a day to transport some of these folks from Eureka to a center like ours. Is that efficient? No. But I think there could be a lot more efficiency in the system. I'm not clear how all of the money works as far as whether when we have a premium service that's going between zones, if Arcata is paying for that or McKinleyville or Eureka. I don't know what part of the budget all of that comes from. But I know that we certainly can't afford $600 one way for a ticket because we only get $100 a day for our services. So that's where we are. So.
Any questions for? Okay, well, thank you. Any discussion on this? I like, yes.
I'll add, our board has considered this, and it's not an easy one. The report was done a little while ago, and I think it wasn't brought forward because it's a pickle, right? Nobody wants to reduce the service or increase the cost, but I'll say, Greg is very diplomatic, and sometimes I get to be the more blunt one. We just can't sustain what we're currently doing. It's not a cost that is fair to the JPA participants of the Humboldt Transit Authority, JPA, and it's not reflective of the true cost of having expanded these service areas. So I can understand how the connection between Eureka and Arcata came to be. And then, we're not, it was before my time on the board, and none of us are 100% sure about the why or how we expanded beyond that. But we did. And so now I think it would be hard to cut those folks off from receiving this service. So instead, an analysis that really looks at what the cost should be, that's more equitable, I think is in order. So I'll just echo what Greg said and say, what we're currently doing isn't a very functional cost-wise or equitable, but we recognize that. And I don't know if Director Byrd has a recommendation about where funding for an additional analysis that gets more granular. The staff report mentions, a more granular analysis. I don't think that's scoped out here as far as what that would look like, but that would be my strong recommendation to this board to consider something like that, because we can't just sort of pull the plug and say we're going to go back to the original service areas and there you go. But we also need to do something.
Yes.
Is it true that 33% of the ride bookings are canceled right now? Is that what our stats are showing? No? Okay. And HTA is running the service, or are you guys outsourcing the dial ride service?
We're operating.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I go? I just wanted to clarify the ask. So is the ask that we help support in finding a consultant to do the methodology we need to make this continue to work? I get, and even if the prices are high, I think, with fuel prices, it's going to be even harder to sustain. And I think that's a consideration. So what would be the best avenue to get to where we need to be? Would that be us supporting some sort of, what would you suggest, Director Byrd?
Yeah, no, thank you. And I really appreciate the discussion. Thank you, Stevie, and thank you, Greg, and all for talking about this too. Step one that we wanted to do, and we have brought this through our SS TAC, we discussed it at an HTA board meeting, and we're discussing it here. We really just wanted to bring the study forward. Again, it was completed some time ago. And so we wanted to make sure that, we're starting to have robust discussions on some of these findings. And there really are the two main ones. One is the funding equity piece and making sure that we are having a structure for whether it's the mandated or the premium service dial-a-ride, that is correctly reflected. So agencies, LTF contributions or other are happening at a rate that is reflective of the costs being generated for the service. So that's the first one. And I think regardless, one of our recommendations, although this is a discussion item, would be to move forward with redistributing those costs in a way that makes sense, or to bring back, a method for doing that. And we do have a draft method with the WTI report. They did look at miles and hours, so that is our starting place there, and I think we would be more suited to move forward with that. The next piece is kind of the big picture piece, which is just the stress that the premium service, just by its nature and by costs in general, are putting on the available funding regionally. Because one of the things we're seeing again is either flat or potentially declining in the next couple of years LTF revenues, which are the largest revenue source for this. So I think one of the things that we need to be thinking about and acknowledging is, like many of the things that we're facing, is at least at our current business model, the unsustainability of the service with the existing funding landscape, and the need to either think or be creative in how we make the service more efficient or make the service more cost effective, whatever that may look like, or how we bring in additional funds. So I think, really the intent of the item here is just to kind of throw it all out on the table and make sure that we're talking about it in plain terms, and that the board is aware and able to provide any information to staff. It's something we'll be working on, regardless, in bringing back to the board for consideration through the contract an updated funding mechanism of cost share between the agencies, and also start to identify what some of those potentials to make the dial-a-ride system more sustainable into the future. We do have some internal funding sources that we could look to in the coming years to see if we could achieve something like that. I think we also have some capacity at a staff level to start looking at least some scenarios or alternatives to see what maybe some modifications to the service, what kind of cost savings they may produce. So I know that was kind of a long-winded answer to there, but really, again, the point is we really just want to get this out there and get any direction we can. We will continue to work on it and bring items back. But what I'm certainly hearing is an interest in looking at the first piece, the funding equity, in as it pertains to the contract, and continuing to find ways to make the long-term dial-a-ride more cost sustainable.
And Mayor Burgell.
Just a follow-up question. So it sounds like not all rides, but a lot of the ridership is medical, or a good portion of it. Is Providence or any of the hospitals doing any kind of balancing on the funding in that regard? Do we know?
That is actually a topic of discussion that has come up as we've talked about this at HTA and the SS TAC. And one of the things I think we would look to and consider is to see if there's more resources that could be brought to the table, whether that was working in partnership with funding or identifying other services that, participants of the current dial-a-ride system, could use, as opposed to necessarily, looking at the service that's funded through HCOG funding. So it's nothing we've identified yet, but it's something we will be hopefully diving deeper into. So
currently they do not contribute at all.
Not to the service that we have in our contracts. No.
Interesting.
Mayor White.
So right now, what the proposal that you have drafted is miles and hours. And we're talking about making this equitable to the various jurisdictions that we pay our fair share. And when you're talking about, maybe you weren't saying we're going to well, let me clarify. The premium service, does that mean it's the 3-zone service, or is it something else?
Yeah. So to go back to Stevie's presentation, the only mandated service areas within Humboldt County are within the city of Eureka and within the city of Arcata. Those are the areas that provide a fixed route service that HDA provides. I believe, and Stevie can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he, in going back to the Dusty archives, determined that it may have been sometime in the 90s when HCOG started through contract having some supplementary service in and around the Humboldt Bay area. In its current iteration, what you see here in the map, so you'll see Arcata is kind of there in blue, Eureka is kind of there in a reddish color, picking on the colorblind guy right now. And then down in the yellow, you'll see the Humboldt Hill area. That's a supplementary area. You see the Samoa Peninsula service. That's a supplementary area. You'll see the corridor area in between Eureka and Arcata, that's supplementary, and you'll see McKinleyville, which is supplementary.
And I probably should know this, but just the example of Humboldt Hill, is that out of the Eureka city limits, and would that be considered county?
Correct.
So I agree with what Supervisor Arroyo was saying is I don't feel comfortable in taking away a service that we have been providing. I actually have a friend, or did, they passed away recently, who used that service. They were blind. And so doing the public transportation, normally regular public transportation, was difficult. And the whole idea of, I guess, as opposed, more resources, yes, but I think we should be looking at cost efficiency. That seems like that would be the first place to go, and then see where we land. And I guess that's all I want to say. You're looking for direction, right, and how we might move forward to make this work. It obviously is not sustainable at status quo. So those are my thoughts. Let's try to make it work.
Chair Johnson, may I offer a little clarification? Just in case there's the perception that we haven't tried to rein these costs in or get this underhand. For many years, the system was contracted out, and CAE Transport, a local company, did offer, did work with us to offer that service. It was significantly more expensive. And so while they had, dispatchers and a lot of attention paid, and perhaps the users liked that, it was on the public's dime considerably more expensive. So we have taken it over, recognizing that there are some efficiencies to be achieved there, and fully hear the feedback that dispatch clarity and procedures could be improved and be more clear to users. But we're already saving a significant amount having taken that service over, and it was within our ability to do so. So that is part of the timing of this is now there's been enough time since that transition for us to really analyze where some adjustments would make sense. And I really feel, confident that now is a good time to do that. And for HTA to continue providing that service is the most cost efficient, in my opinion, way to do that. So.
Okay. Any other? I don't see any.
I guess I just wanted to say I wasn't being hypercritical of the county, but just saying both probably need to be addressed. And I'm really happy that they are providing that service. It sounds like it has saved a whole lot of money that would be passed on to Med River Adult Daycare or the consumer or whatever that might look like. So yeah. I'm happy that we're doing that. I'm happy that we're at this juncture where we're looking at how can we do it better. Yeah. Anyway.
And I'm speaking kind of with my HTA hat on here, but I can't ignore the fact that if the county were to pay the true cost of the service when it comes to where the rides are generated or where they're operating, it would be impossible for the county to really afford that true cost as well. So I think we're going to move towards something fairer. And if we were to absorb that overnight, it wouldn't be tenable either. And when I say we, I mean kind of wearing my county hat for 1 second. But I recognize that I'm not the rep to this board for the county.
Sounds like we have a variety of plans.
Yeah, I mean, the two main questions remain the funding equity piece and the funding sustainability piece.
That's it.
And we wanted to bring it forward and get an idea on board direction and should we continue to work on these items. And really the direction I'm coming out of with is yes and yes. And they may be on different timescales, but I think unless there's more discussion to be had, there's an interest in the board to continue to explore these items and bring them back.
We want to keep it operating, so I think that's the consensus of everybody. So, all right. Come to HCOG highlights.
Yes, thank you. Everybody fill your waters. This promises to be a 1 hour. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. You know, it's funny though. So this is just a quick slideshow of our end of year highlights. And, you know, we are in March of 2026. So it's almost like we're a little late. We should be giving a midway 26 review. We kept putting it off because of just content heavy meetings the last couple of months. Of course, this one turned out to be content heavy, but we didn't want to skip it any longer. So just first and foremost, I just want to take this as an opportunity to reflect back on some of the key work elements that have been completed by HCOG staff, to really highlight some of the excellent work. In particular, our other 3 staff members, our Administrative Services Officer, Amy Eberwine, our Regional Planner, Stevie Luther, and our Senior Regional Planner, Una Smith, all do. So, and I'd like to thank Amy, of course, for putting this slideshow together. So, first and foremost, one of the big projects we undertook in 2025 was continued work on the Multimodal and Vibrant Neighborhoods project. So, as the board may recall, you know, we've had a lot of activity on this project, even at this board level. Una brought forward the level of traffic stress, that great GIS planning and mapping tool for level of traffic stress measurement for bicyclists and pedestrians. There's also been there was a Safe Routes to School pilot and pop-up event that was conducted as part of this project in the city of Arcata in partnership with Fuente Nueva Charter School. And there was also that fantastic speaker series and walk audits that was coordinated over several days with Dan Burden, Victor Dover, and Josh Meyer in early December. Those were all really great events, and we had a lot of really great things coming out of that project. We have continued work here in 2026, but that was a big lift and a lot of work specifically by Una, and would really like to just throw out appreciation for that work and acknowledge that project for 2025. Of course, at HCOG, we were involved in active transportation as usual. We conducted Bike Month Humboldt and were a key member of that coalition last year, in addition to acting in support of the Humboldt Bay Trail Fund Committee. In addition to that, acting in support of the Humboldt Bay Trail completion celebration that happened in the middle of 2025 for the completion of that fantastic project. Of course, we support transit, and in 2025, HCOG, largely with one of our TIRSIP grants, continued the multimodal mobility marketing plan in conjunction with HTA. That included developing videos for how to ride the bus and videos for driver recruitment. So those were really great and continued collaborative efforts between HCOG staff and the staff at Humboldt Transit Authority. Of course, we just completed last month the update to the Regional Transportation Plan for 2026. That was something that staff picked up at about May or June of last year and completed a whole update to the RTP within about 6 to 7 months. Something that I think we should all be really proud of, and I'd like to acknowledge again the work of HCOG staff in working together to get that all brought forward and updated, and with as robust a community outreach program as I think we're able to put on in a shortened period of time. At HCOG, we of course are also we are in charge of SAFE, the acronym, which stands for the Service Authority for Freeway Emergencies. This is actually one of kind of the initial instigators for HCOG to come into being in the first place. So we administer the call box program around the county, the emergency call boxes, in addition to contracting with CHP for supplemental patrols for assistance, driver assistance on our rural routes. These are some stats from the CHP supplemental patrols with the contracts that HCOG funds, but over 12,000 miles driven additionally by CHP officers, over 550 patrol hours, 206 motorist services during that time, 67 warnings, and the removal of one impaired driver. So money well spent on our rural roads that have difficulty being serviced by limited resources. HCOG by the numbers, of course, one of the main things that we do at HCOG is administer funding and provide funding opportunities as we can for our member agencies. In 2025, I'm happy to say that we were able to allocate upwards of $16 million over. These are 8 of the main programs, but there is more if you start to think about the grants that we administered as well. And of that 16 million, about 11 million of that went directly towards transit activities, and about 5 million of that went towards streets and roads projects with RSTP funding and with the STIP. something that HCOG has done exceptionally well out in the last few years is partnering with grants with local agencies, with applying for new grants for HCOG work. And that fortunately continued into 2025. We were announced the award for a sustainable transportation planning grant through Caltrans for the Lolita Safe Routes to School project. The board may recall just about an hour and a half ago, we awarded a contract to GHD. They'll be moving forward with that project collaboratively with our project team, which is HCOG staff, RCAA, and the county. Big shout out to that whole team for pulling that grant application together, and we're excited to get that project moving. This is not a shameless plug. Like I said, Amy did develop this this presentation here. So I did come on board in April of 2025, and it's been a great year, and really proud of the work that we've done. I do want to acknowledge in this, though, that with April being when I came on, it also means there was 3.5 months before then where the interim executive director, former fiscal administrative officer and longtime HCOG employee Debbie Egger, filled that role. So big thanks to her as well for stepping up and really bringing forward her expertise in a time of need for the agency. And last but not least, as is tradition, and as these have been brought forward, just a few highlights from our staff outside of the work area that we just like to acknowledge. I'll start in the upper left with our associate planner, Stevie Luther. In 2025, he was continuing and completing his educational sabbatical in Barcelona, Spain, where he finished his master's in urban design for healthy cities. We got him back, I believe, in late July, not a moment too soon, and really happy to have him back, although he looks like he's having a great time there in Spain. Speaking of being gone, Una went on what looks like a great ride on the scenic bikeways up in Oregon, including riding through the Cascade mountain ranges and all the wonderful geology and infrastructure and scenery that provides as well. Our administrative services officer, Amy, she and her husband got off on a few fun little trips this last year, well, in 2025, including one where they got to go up to Seattle and both meet one of the creators of one of their favorite games, which is a cool thing for them. And I'll end with myself. 2025 for me was really a great year to spend with my two young daughters. We took several trips. We took more soccer tournament trips than I care to necessarily recall. And I guess I'll throw out there, not only is it me with my beautiful daughters, but my wife as well. So a really good year for all of us, I suppose. But with that, just again, I'm excited to take this opportunity to reflect a little bit, to highlight some of the work again that our excellent staff is doing, and acknowledge them, because the three other counterparts that I have at HCOG are arguably significantly more responsible for a lot of the work that we continue to do and a lot of the successes we continue to have. So with that is our 2026 end of year report. 2025. Yeah. Fiscal year 25-26.
Looks like it's about time for an evaluation too. Okay. Well, with this, it's time to, by motion, reconvene as the HCOG board, at which time the PAC recommendations will be approved. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are we still on roll calls? Okay, so a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are reconvened as the HCOG board, and we come to the executive director's report again.
Yeah. I will be brief before passing it off to Una, who has an update on some activities under our PACT grant. I just wanted to make the board aware, as you may recall, in the February board meeting, one of the items we considered was an SB 125 funding amendment, so we could continue to explore expanded transit services in the city of Fortuna. I just wanted to note that there's been some moving parts with funding and funding availability, both with SB 125, but also as some of our other transit fund projections are coming in. And we did also have a good and productive meeting with the board at HTA subsequent to that. So I just want to make the board aware we are taking a little bit of a pause to reevaluate some of the financials, because there are some implications with things that we didn't necessarily anticipate at the time that we brought the business item forward. So just an FYI, we'll continue to work on it from a staff perspective and with direction from the boards that we've discussed it with. And we'll hopefully be bringing back something a little bit more robust at a future meeting. Vision Zero rollout, we finally, knock on wood, today we got our environmental clearance from Caltrans for our demonstration projects that'll be part of our Vision Zero action plan. So that is the pop-up safety demonstration projects that'll occur in the city of Eureka, the city of Ferndale, the city of Fortuna, and the city of Arcata. With that clearance, we have submitted our grant amendment to FHWA. So we hope within about a 6-week time frame that those projects, 6 to 8 weeks time frame, that those projects will start to pop up in these communities. We're working heavily on the public outreach piece with our consultant and with the local agencies right now. So you'll see a lot more, but just wanted to provide notice to the board. We do anticipate those projects popping up in about May. And with that, I will hand it over to our senior planner, Una.
Thank you very much. Very quick report. The handout I gave to you at the beginning of the meeting is our consultants from Jarrett Walker Associates coming in the last week of April. This is to continue. We've had kickoff meetings and such, but this is the big convening for educating people on transit and land use planning. And there are 2 events. The blue highlights in the packet explain it. The ones I think you would be most interested in is the stakeholder workshop, which is a 3-hour workshop with an educational planning game to really understand the balances of transit when you want coverage, that is geographical coverage, and you also want frequency, and you want to attract riders. Why generally you can't have both all the time if you have a limited budget. So it's a hands-on interactive workshop that will be open to the whole community. Then there is a 2-day core design retreat that is really more technical in nature. It's full days. Many, if not all of your organizations already have staff that are committed to going to that, many of them paid through the grant to attend that. But it is also open to people who are decision makers in that realm. So it is open to the board. But what you might be more interested in is at the end of each of those days from 4 to 5, there is a check-in where the consultants will lead you through what the participants did during the 8-hour day. The product from that core design retreat then becomes the public document that is then reviewed largely, widely, and to get comments on basically what are transit network concepts. So we will reach out to you to see who is interested in it, and we will be following all guidance and rules for the Brown Act to make sure this works well.
Thank you. And with that, we come to our Caltrans report.
Thanks. I'll be quick. A few upcoming public meetings. There is one actually tonight for the State Route 255 at New Navy Base Road, the roundabout. It's at the Manila Community Center at 6 p.m. And there's a meeting to discuss the next steps for Fernbridge on Thursday, March 26th at 5:30 p.m. Feasibility study. We're in the process of preparing a feasibility study that will explore future multimodal operational and safety improvements for 4th and 5th Streets in Eureka. And we'll find out next month if we're approved for funding for that. And then I wanted to put in a plug for the Transit Policy Implementation Plan. There's a design focus group meeting happening on March 24th from 10:30 to noon. Discussion will include transit design, standards, potential guidance related to transit facilities playbook, mobility hub guidance, and bus on shoulder guidance. And the outcomes will influence the Transit Implementation Action Plan, which provides direction on incorporating transit into the state highway system through agency coordination. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And Supervisor Arroyo.
think I'll skip this one. I've taken lots of your bandwidth in the last couple meetings.
Okay. Any board members have anything that they would like to report, discuss? Okay. Well, we have reached the end of our meeting and we are adjourned.
7 o'clock sharp.